believe nothing you hear, and only half that you see.
So I, male, 30s, haven't had a paranormal experience of any kind until this past weekend. I was staying in the guest room of my father's house, which has quilts from each of my ancestors hanging on the walls. My father's house is new, brand new in fact. They moved in this April after the house burned down on Christmas Eve of 2019. They'd only been living in the house a couple of months before the exterior fireplace connected to the house lit the roof on fire. The house is enormous. The room I'm staying in shares the wall with the bathroom on the west, and the room with a full bar to the north. That room connects with the living room / kitchen to the north, which is huge. I'd say the distance between the guest bedroom and the living room is about as long as a bus. So they're a bit of a distance away. I'm sitting in bed, passively playing Animal Crossing just after midnight, maybe 12:30, when I hear my dad talking on the phone. He's absolutely a workaholic, so for a second I didn't think much of it. But he retired a few months ago and doesn't stay up late at all anymore. The conversation sounded pretty tense and I couldn't quite hear all that was being discussed, but my dad sounded very matter-of-fact. From what little I picked up, he was aggressively trying to explain his reasoning for disliking some guy. I got closer to the door to hear better, not wanting to open it and disturb him, but the sound didn't get any louder. I decided to open the door, and when I did, the voice disappeared. I like white noise to sleep, but my dad hates it, so he keeps his house dead quiet. I walked into the living room trying to hear whatever might be going on, but it remained silent. I shook it off and decided to use the bathroom right before bed. I sat down on the toilet, phone in hand, and proceeded to drop the kids off at the pool. Then I heard my sister's voice, closer than my father's voice was, and clearer as well. My sister is very much into the paranormal and is very convinced that paranormal things are happening to her. She certainly has treated a Ouija board as a toy for many years and always desired to have a ghostly encounter, so I'm not sure if she provoked something or not. I remain skeptical, but am reevaluating those feelings now. She recently had a baby and was staying the night at Dad's because the baby was sick. I still couldn't phrase what was being said, but I could tell she was telling a story. The only clear thing I heard was, "He has killed, and he will kill again." And that was more than enough for me to pinch it off, wash my hands, and run to bed as fast as I could. I put in headphones and stayed up for another hour and a half watching Animaniacs until I was tired enough to sleep. When I turned off the phone, I took out my headphones. I could hear my dad's voice again. It sounded like it came from the bed I was in, and it said,
"Hey bud."
Just like my dad does. Only there was no one there. I think I encountered a mimic, though I'm not entirely sure. I'm curious what you all think. I moved to my current address just a few months ago, and as my family and I were moving in, our upstairs neighbor told us that the house is fairly active for paranormal activity. I didn't really know what to think, but I don't consider myself a skeptic or a believer. But there are truly no explanations for the things I've experienced. The first big experience I had in the house was a few days after we started moving in. We were only moving from another city over, so we decided to kind of take our time with the move. My mum and brother had taken the U-Haul back to the apartment to load up belongings while I stayed behind and started to move the boxes into rooms. I was moving boxes from the living room into the kitchen when I looked up to look out the window. I found a man in an old black suit and hat walking down the sidewalk to the backyard. He didn't look at me. He just walked straight back. I thought at first that he was possibly the property manager or owner. I opened up the back door to go and meet him, but he had disappeared. That was before the neighbor warned me. He told me that the malicious activity mostly takes place in the basement. Snarls, thrown rocks, scratches. I've only experienced knocking sounds and weird shadows. And his son's bedroom upstairs. He told me his son was dragged out of bed by the ankles. Most of what I've experienced has been in the kitchen. I often hear people walking upstairs in areas that have since been boarded up. There's a staircase that the owners boarded up and turned into a pantry. Stuff is constantly getting knocked off countertops and thrown to the floor. I was also grabbed once when sweeping the floor. I haven't really given it any attention or tried to contact or communicate because it hasn't really impacted me. A lot of it I just thought was weird and figured it's an old house. Old houses do weird things. Last night was completely different. It was around 2:30 in the morning. I was in bed, trying my best to sleep when I heard something in the living room or kitchen, making the weirdest noise I've ever heard in my life. It sounded like a man yelling, trying to mimic a cat in heat. It was not my cat, he's neutered, and was asleep by my feet. I mentioned mimicry in the title because sometimes my cat makes yowling noises when he's out in the kitchen. He really likes the way his meowing and carrying on echoes back to him. This was not that sound. It was not a cat outside. I have the windows closed and the air conditioning on. This sound was inside the house. I have no idea what could have made the noise, other than something supernatural. It scared the hell out of me, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. I'm kind of concerned. I don't know if I should truly be concerned. Is this a sign that whatever entities are in the house are getting bolder? Are they trying to target my cat? I would love to hear if you have any ideas on what it could be, or if you've experienced similar things, especially what happened after. Since around 2014, I've had periodic experiences with something that I've taken to calling the bathroom ghost. A vast number of these experiences have happened in or around the bathrooms of places I lived or stayed at for some odd reason. The first encounter, in what I think was 2014, was at a friend's house where I often spent the night. I was in my sophomore or junior year of high school at the time. I always got a lot of strange feelings in that house. The air felt heavy and wrong in a way that I couldn't quite explain or articulate. And certain rooms I just couldn't be in because they would make me feel anxious for some reason. Anyway, one of these days I was staying over. I heard something strange that scared me half to death while I was in the bathroom. To the left of me was the door. To the right was the bathtub. On my right side, I heard a voice whisper, "Hey," clear as day, not far from my ear. It made me jump out of my skin, and I recognized that it sounded exactly like my friend's voice. Now, the speed with which I convinced myself it must have somehow just been the shower curtains shifting was honestly remarkable, but just as soon as I calmed myself down, it did it again. "Hey," in that whispered tone, in my friend's voice. Needless to say, I got out of that room as fast as possible. Now, I want to clarify that there was no way this could have actually been my friend. Reasons being that, A, the voice came from the side of the room opposite the door, and there was no nearby room through which he could have spoken through the wall or something. Also, the voice wasn't muffled in any way. B, I could clearly hear my friend talking loudly to his mum in the living room, which was at least 30 feet from the bathroom door. Now, I only experienced this once in that house, but here's why I think that whatever this thing was, it's followed me. In my first apartment with my friends, there was one notable circumstance of something happening in the bathroom. Now, this may not have been the same thing, It wasn't a voice which mimicked one of my friends. This was at least 3 to 4 years after the first experience, but myself and my 2 roommates were all sat in the living room watching movies when we suddenly heard an odd sound from the bathroom. The hairdryer had turned itself on. It had been plugged in, so maybe it was just a spooky coincidence. But there hadn't been any sort of power surge to have triggered it, and we were all pretty spooked. The most recent experience, which truly makes me believe that this thing has followed me, happened just last year, not too long after moving into my current apartment. Once again, I was in the bathroom, and I heard a voice come from the door. Clear as day, I heard my fiance's voice say, "Hello?" Reasonably, I had assumed that they came to the door to talk to me, which we do with some frequency, so I responded back, "Hello?" I didn't get any further response, so I started to get a bit nervous. My fiance had been in the bed when I went to the bathroom, and the bedroom's just next door. But we have long since learned that we can't hear each other if one of us yells from the bed towards the bathroom, hence why we sometimes stand outside the door to talk. I got out and, a bit nervous, asked if they had been trying to speak to me through the door. They were lying down where I left them when I came into the room, and they very casually told me that no, they hadn't. Fully shaken now, I told them what I had heard, and they were a little amused, like, the bathroom ghost strikes again, which I did also find funny. They weren't making fun of me for being a little freaked out by any means. My fiancé is not the type of person who tries to scare other people by messing with them, so I know they weren't just playing a joke on me and acting like they had no idea what I meant. Does anybody know what sort of thing this might be? Is it in my head? What kind of thing copies people's voices? About a year and a half ago, I moved into an older home out in the country with a friend from college. We have bedrooms that share a wall. Ever since we had moved in, there has been strange instances. During the day, we will get weird feelings that something is watching us. We will hear footsteps in the upstairs, and things will be moved around or knocked over in the kitchen. About 6 months in of us living together, her boyfriend moved in, and I started staying over at my boyfriend's more often. At this point, I would always notice when I got home my TV was on. It's always off when I leave in the morning for work. I don't sleep with it. And a decorative box I have under my TV unit is always shoved to the back end of the shelf. My friend said she started noticing mornings I was gone that she would hear movement in my room of the closet and dresser doors opening, clothes shifting, as if I was there. It seems as though something was mimicking the sounds I would make most mornings while I was there getting ready for work. A few weeks ago, her and her boyfriend were gone for the weekend, and I had the house to myself. The house cat was also gone for the weekend. I got woken up in the middle of the night. I'm not sure what time it was, but I felt the cat jump into bed with me by my feet and started kneading the bed as he usually would. It wasn't until I reached down to pet him and find nothing was there to realize he was not even in the house. We have also seen a man in random areas of the house, usually upstairs in one of the guest rooms, or walking into the bathroom. I only caught glimpses of him, and he's always walking into a room when we catch him, and is gone when we go to investigate. Do you guys think this stuff is related to each other? Any ideas what this could be? We lived in a rural area out in Illinois. We've been told there were Native Americans that used to inhabit this property. Not sure if that gives any clues. Any comments would be helpful. Thanks in advance. I just had the weirdest experience about an hour ago. I woke up and went across a very small hall to the bathroom. I live in a piece of crap small trailer with thin walls. My brother's room connects to this tiny hall, and my mother was asleep in the living room, also off the same hall. This hallway is maybe 3 by 6. Anyway, I go to the bathroom and walk back into my room and close the door. I take 3 big steps to my bed and start to turn to sit and then recline. But all of a sudden I hear a sound like a dog, but it doesn't sound right. It sounds off, like something or someone trying to sound like a dog. I froze in terror. In fact, I don't think I've ever been this terrified in my life, aside from near-miss car accidents. Just filled with fear. It made like a long noise in 3 sets of 3. I literally only unfroze long enough to lock my bedroom door and grab a big stick I keep next to it. I tried to call my sibling twice on the phone in case it was some intruder or something. I didn't want them to run out unprotected if I called out their name loudly. But they thought my calls were their alarm and silenced them. The sound continued after the phone calls. It felt like something was still out there. I yelled my sibling's name. It woke my mum up, and my sibling finally woke up, and when they came I unlocked the door. I told them, and they did not hear anything. We have 2 dogs. It was neither of them. And when I came out, they were asleep. My sibling asked if maybe I was just hallucinating, having just woken up, and I would think that, except I have a litter of 4 8-week-old kittens in the room with me. When the noise started, 2 were near me, one a foot from the door and the other right next to my foot getting ready to attack it. They both froze too, and bowed their backs up. The one near my foot had his paw on my foot, and the only movement the poor thing managed was digging his claws into the top of my foot. These kittens typically do not stay still unless they are sleeping. Our dogs have made all kinds of barking and noises around them, and they have never really reacted, aside from maybe being briefly startled by the barking. My sibling and I look around our small double wide, and the back door was unlocked but closed. We go out on the porch and hear nothing. As we were walking back to my room, I heard the noise again, and it was very faint. 3, and like it was moving away outside. My sibling actually heard that this time, and when I heard it the first time, it sounded like it was in the house, right outside my door. My mum says she didn't hear anything though. I'm so freaked out, I don't want to sleep. I have a handgun in a case next to me right now. The logical explanation is some weirdo coming into the back door and being a weirdo, but I think we would have heard them trying to get out of the house. It is cramped, and there are quite a few obstacles to slow someone down, or that would cause noise. No footsteps, the door not opening or closing, either front or back. Does anybody else have any ideas about this? Edit. My sibling and I were talking this morning trying to come up with more explanations, one of which was wind. But we have wind pretty consistently lately, and this has been the only time we've heard this so far, and the fact that it is patterned leaves me doubting the wind. I do hope it is some kind of household fluke. This happened on Sunday, 16th of January 2022. The first event happened at 8 p.m. I was in the WC of our house. We have a full bathroom and a WC, and I had a coughing fit that sounded really bad. As I'm calming down and trying to catch my breath, I hear my mum's voice coming from the full bathroom asking me if I'm okay. The bathrooms are connected with a common airway, and we usually use it to speak to one another if it's necessary. Otherwise, it's used as an airway. I say that I'm okay and get out of the WC, and I go to knock at the full bathroom's door to reassure my mum that I'm okay. but nobody was in the bathroom. My mum was in her room on her computer. Confused, I asked Mum if she's been to the bathroom in the past 5 minutes, and she said she hasn't. She didn't want to lose any moment of her friend's radio program, so she was keeping her water intake to the minimum. I just shook my head and went on with my afternoon. The second event happened at 6 a.m. I was about to head to bed after spending the entire night writing. I'm more creative at night. And I decided that it was enough of writing for tonight. I went to brush my teeth and pee before bed. I'm peeing when someone knocks on the door. And then I hear my dad's voice asking me if I'm okay. I say yes, and he says, "All right," before I hear him enter the kitchen and turn on the small kitchen light. I hear him prepare the kettle for his coffee and prepare my sister's breakfast. I look at my phone and it's 6:15 a.m. I think that my dad might have woken up an hour earlier than usual because he couldn't sleep. He usually wakes up at 7 a.m. and starts waking my sister up for school. It wasn't unusual for my dad to wake up at 6 or 5 a.m. or not sleep at all at night, reading comics on his computer, waiting for 7 a.m. So I shrug it off and get on with my thing, but when I finish and I'm turning a light off, I turn to say good morning to my dad, but the kitchen is empty and dark. Dad is nowhere to be seen. I gently go to my parents' room and I can hear my mum and my dad snores. So I go to my room to sleep. At 7 a.m. I woke up to the sound of my dad's alarm clock, and I get up to go ask my dad if he went to the kitchen around 6 a.m. And he said no, but had a dream of getting a glass of water from the kitchen. I'm still confused about these two events. Any idea what could have happened? Update. My dad told the entire family of his experience a couple of days ago, similar to mine but on a different day. It was the 27th of January 2022, and my dad woke up, startled at 3:30 a.m. because he heard my voice and my sister's voice calling him. He tells us that he woke up, but all of us were asleep when he checked. Same time, same day, 3:30 a.m. my sister woke up for no reason because she heard Dad's voice calling her in her sleep. She thought Dad was waking her up for school. Mum wakes up at 3:33 a.m. because she heard Dad's voice telling her that my sister and I needed them. But my dad isn't on the bed. He has gone to check on us. I'm dreaming, and in the dream, I'm calling for my dad because I'm looking for him. I wake up when I can't find him, and my first instinct is to look at my phone. It's 3:36 a.m. Confused, we all shared our experiences. We don't know why it's happening. Mum joked that I somehow psychically contacted Dad through my dream, and he always goes on high alert when my sister or I need something from them in the middle of the night. The thing is that I can't remember the dream I was having. I only remember the part where I was looking for my dad. And that's weird because I usually remember all my dreams. I'm pretty sure I didn't sleep talk. Hearing him share this reminded me of my experience a week prior to this, and thought to add it. When I was about 8 or 9, can't remember the exact age, I visited my relative's apartment with my mum. My father bought me a cute doll from overseas, and I wanted to show it to everyone in the household. While my mum was talking to the relatives, I decided to visit their neighbor's apartment. I knew them well and I had been to their place many times. I went to that flat, greeted some family members sitting in the living room. I then took the stairs to go to the upper floor. I remember the upper floor was dark and the only light was coming from the veranda. I saw 2 family members sitting and talking. I went to them, showed them my doll and walked back to the dark hallway to reach to the stairs that would take me back down to the first floor. That's when I saw a woman walk into the room at the back of the hallway. From the back, she looked so much like one of the women who lived in that flat. I thought of following her into the room as I wanted to show her my doll. Before I entered that room, I became very scared for some reason. Part of the reason may have been because the room was pitch black, and I was confused why she wouldn't turn on the light. I was worried she might hide in a corner trying to jump at me in the dark. So I decided not to go into the room and went downstairs, only to find that woman in the kitchen on the first floor. I didn't see her on my way in, but she had been downstairs all along. I told her what I saw upstairs, and she exchanged a funny look with another family member there and just brushed me off. By the way, there were no guests in the house. I don't know who I saw. I told my mum about it later too. She also brushed it off. But I later overheard her talking to my dad about some funny things going on in that apartment. After they brought in a harp-like musical instrument, my mother said they would hear someone playing the harp at night, and when they checked, the sound would stop. I've been intrigued by mimic stories, especially because of this childhood experience. This is the one and only encounter I have with anything paranormal. From where I come from, there are beliefs and warnings about mimics. For example, hikers and hunters are told not to call each other by their real names, as mimics can lure them to make them lost by calling their names in the voice of someone they know. They could also trick you by looking like your friends and make you follow them. Do you have such beliefs in your country? If you have similar stories to share, I would like to hear them. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. As always, a big thank you to all of the Reddit users who kindly allowed me to use their stories. If you want to help support this channel, you will find links to both my Patreon and my Teespring store in the description below, so feel free to have a look. And the biggest thank you to all of you who continue to support me. I truly do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.